If you were to walk into almost any convenience store in India and go to the cosmetics section, you would find an extensive stock of skin lightening products. Small pink cardboard boxes depict young fair-skinned models smiling radiantly. They come in a wide variety. There are facial creams, deodorants, and strangely, vaginal bleachers. These products are profitable and in high demand. 60% of women and 10% of men lighten their skin in India, according to this academic paper by Neha Mishra. But while the practice is common, it can be dangerous. Certain products have been linked to liver and kidney damage. Additionally, toxic substances found in products like mercury and bleach can damage skin cells. In a 2015 study of 100 college students, 84% of women and 60% of men surveyed were aware of the dangers. So why would people do this to themselves despite the risk? The answer lies in the Indian beauty standard, which deems fair skin beautiful. Skin bleaching cosmetics are part of a multi-billion-dollar industry that harms people's health while leveraging the power of the Indian beauty standard. And by valuing light skin, the standard plays into colorism. Colorism is a wide-reaching and deep-rooted issue faced by India. It can greatly affect your life based on how light or dark you are, which could cause you to bleach your skin. But why is this practiced in the first place? In this video essay, I will be presenting the argument that colorism in India is a product of colonization and caste. It is part of a global issue created by European beauty standards and racist ideas in colonized communities and countries. Additionally, the movements and activism against it are decolonization initiatives. Modern-day colorism in India. So, what is colorism? According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, colorism is defined as prejudice or discrimination against individuals with a dark skin tone, typically among people of the same ethnic or racial group. Colorism has roots in racism, but most of the time happens within an ethnic group or race, not between multiple ethnic groups or races. This form of discrimination is a major problem in Indian society. Here are some illustrating statistics, as noted by the Dark is Beautiful website. Dark-skinned students are more frequently bullied in Indian schools. 90% of Indian advertisements depict people with light skin. Heroes and heroines in Bollywood movies are almost always light. Until recently, a matchmaking site called Shaadi allowed its users to filter dates by skin tone. That's not all, though. Many popular crayon brands label peach-colored crayons as skin, despite it not even being the most common skin tone in India. Numerous people who place newspaper ads for arranged marriages cite a preference for light skin, finding it more attractive. As reported by Mishra's paper, dark-skinned Indian women have been affected by pressure from advertisers and relatives to lighten their skin, and many report being devalued or considered ugly because of it. This can impact their careers, relationships, and mental health. It also doesn't help that bleaching products like Fair and Lovely, which was recently renamed Glow and Lovely, associate fairness with beauty and success. For instance, look at this ad. The woman in the picture starts darker with a neutral facial expression, then as she gets lighter and lighter, it turns into a smile. Here's a quick run-through of some other messed-up ads. Having giant billboards and ads that say melanin is bad are kind of the colorist equivalent of racist political cartoons. The caste and colonization of India. So how did this mess start? What caused this issue in Indian society? To answer this, let's go way back to the origins of civilization on the Indian subcontinent. Please note, India is a diverse country with a complex history, so it's impossible to cover every piece of information here, and I may leave some things out. In ancient India, there were multiple civilizations with diverse South Asian ethnic groups. For this period, there was no evidence of colorism or a hierarchy based on ethnicity. Through religious texts, it is apparent that there were both light and dark-skinned characters in mythology. Then the caste system began. The caste system came from the religious text known as the Rig Veda, in a story about God sacrificing a man who had his different body parts turned into societal classes. In the myth, the working classes were the lower body parts like the feet, but all parts had equal importance. This story was interpreted, or misinterpreted, depending on how you look at it, to create a societal construct that divided people based on occupation and class. Lower caste people were considered inferior to the rich people. Eventually this played into colorism because people of lower castes had to labor outside, while upper caste people stayed indoors. So the lower castes were generally darker because of the sun compared to their lighter skinned counterparts. Something else that is important to note is that there is a little known but horrific slave trade from East Africa to India in the late 1500s to early 1600s. East African captives were taken against their will by several different European countries, as well as Arabs and Ottomans, and sold to the wealthy in India. There, the system of slavery was practiced just as harshly and dehumanizing as chattel slavery in the U.S. and West Indies. This may have contributed as well to the idea of dark skin being subordinate or inferior, as there was now a strong race hierarchy in India. Around the mid-19th century, slavery in India was abolished, and the formerly enslaved people formed their own communities and culture. They are known today as the Habshi people or the Sindhi people, and there are around 50 to 70,000 of them in India today. In 1858, India was colonized by Britain. The Indian subcontinent had been occupied by several European countries like Portugal in the past. In the 1600s, the Dutch, English, and French made private companies to obtain resources and money from the subcontinent. They eventually took over most of the area from the ruling Mughals, who didn't have a navy and couldn't fight back. The East India Company, which was founded by the British, annexed multiple states like Bengal and pushed the French out of India. They did this by bribing leaders and turning communities against each other. They began collecting taxes from the native Indians and shifting agriculture production to things that would enable a profit for Britain. When a sepoy or soldier in the Indian army named Mangal Pandey staged a mutiny by attacking British officers, the East India Company responded by terrorizing communities, decimating farmland, and killing hundreds of thousands of people. Due to the atrocities, Queen Victoria disbanded the company and possession of India passed to the British Empire. Under this new rule, Indian people had access to British jobs, albeit menial ones, but they were only given to lighter-skinned Indians. This started to establish the idea that lighter-skinned people had power and influence compared to their darker counterparts, and it also intertwined with the colorism of the caste system, which was still in place at the time. Let's also note that the colonization of this nation was done essentially by a bunch of racists. There is no benevolence or goodwill involved. The British believed that they were superior, civilized, and destined to rule over the people of India, who they deemed inferior savages. Segregation was a widespread practice with signs in front of clubs, restaurants, and colleges proclaiming Indians and dogs not allowed. Indian people were being denied entry to places in their own country. Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of Britain during the 1940s, once said, "I hate Indians. They are a beastly people with a beastly religion." Britain also let close to 3 million people in Bengal starve to death in 1943 under war-related restrictions imposed by the British government. This happened even though India lent Britain reinforcements, money, and supplies during World War II. The racism practiced during this period established a power dynamic with white people lording over brown people. Many colorist ideas originated from the same dynamic. Another practice during this era that contributed to modern-day colorism was British people treating light-skinned Indians better than others and hiring them more often. This contributed to the idea of light skin being superior and associated with success. Additionally, colonization contributed to European beauty standards being established in the country. Historically, European beauty standards deemed women who had white skin, blue or light-colored eyes, straight hair of a lighter color, a sharp nose, a thin body type, thin lips, etc. beautiful. These traits can be common in white people, but I don't want to generalize here. These traits are not as common in South Asia, where skin tone varies but is often darker, and facial features also differ. Again, I don't want to generalize. However, if you look at the modern Indian beauty standard, it values light skin, meaning that the beauty standards of the British bled over to modern-day Indian culture. Can I stop now? And that is how colorism became part of India. But to fully understand the situation, let's look again at the current state of the issue in India. How does it affect the psyche? What are its larger societal consequences? And how are people fighting back? Dark-complexioned people, especially women and girls, are often told by relatives to use lightening products. They receive microaggressions like, "You're pretty for a dark girl," or "Don't stay out in the sun or you'll get darker." Fair skin is also tied to desirability, with countless marriage advertisements requesting a light-skinned partner. But this form of discrimination can have more drastic consequences. In the state of Maharashtra, 100 girls from different indigenous groups were training to be flight attendants with a state-sponsored education, but 92 of them were rejected from airlines, likely due to their dark skin. The other 8 girls were recruited only as ground staff. Trigger warnings for brief description of murder, suicide, and verbal abuse. In 2014, a woman in the city of Gurgaon hung herself from a ceiling fan, reportedly due to her husband verbally abusing her for being dark-skinned. The next year, a school teacher in West Bengal committed suicide by setting herself on fire because of the colorist humiliation she faced from her family. And in 2018, a woman in Maharashtra poisoned food at a housewarming party due to taunts about her skin color from family members. 5 people died, including 4 children. Colonization led to colorism, which led to some messed up societal issues in India, but this isn't the only country with the same post-colonial problem. Global colonization and whiteness as beauty. In South Korea, there is a multi-billion-dollar beauty industry heavily embedded in national norms. Women are scrutinized heavily for their appearance in a country where they hold 1/10 of corporate management positions, face sexual harassment at alarming rates, and are bombarded with ads for plastic surgery. The country has the highest rate of plastic surgery per capita, and 1/3 of women who are 19 or 20 say they have gotten a procedure. The 2 most common are double eyelid surgery and nose surgery. Double eyelid surgery aims to make the eyes larger, more symmetric, and almond-shaped. This alters the trait of monolids, which are common in people from Korea and other East and Southeast Asian countries. Nose surgery often aims to make the nose bridge straighter, reduce the size of the nose, or make it less round. These 2 procedures align with Korea's Eurocentric beauty standards that prioritize large double-lidded eyes and small sharp noses. The country also has a profitable skin lightening industry. While South Korea wasn't colonized by European or Western countries, it's clear that European beauty standards have affected the current culture and climate today. This is also shown by the fact that white models are very popular in South Korea, as reported by video essayist Chai Lin. In her video essay, The Erasure of Asian Beauty, she says, "Most recently on my Instagram, there has been a model on there. Her name is Dasha Taran, who's from Russia, but she works in Seoul, and she's had great success there because A, she looks half Asian, but B, and more importantly, she has all the Korean beauty standards because she's white. She has pale fair skin, a small face, a high British nose, big eyes, and dark hair." In her other video essay, Colorism, Why Asian People Want to Be White, she says, "Today we are bombarded with images of white Eurocentric beauty, no matter where you are in the world. Besides wanting lighter skin, a lot of Asian beauty standards are still Eurocentric inspired. Maybe some of them were inspired by auspicious ancient beliefs, but I doubt it. Things like long earlobes mean longevity, but you don't see people lining up to get their earlobes elongated." In the U.S. during slavery, light-skinned enslaved people, who were often children of slave masters as a result of sexual assault by masters, were treated slightly better than other enslaved people by slavers and often worked inside instead of outside. These ideas continued after slavery during the early 1920s, when upper-class African Americans used the brown paper bag test. This was when a black person's skin was compared to a brown paper bag. If they were lighter, they were allowed entry to a given social setting or workplace. If they were darker, they were excluded. As a result, much of the black upper class was light-skinned, while many others who were darker did not have the same measure of wealth. This sort of thing continues to this day within American society. A 2009 study of more than 12,000 incarcerated black women in North Carolina concluded that the lighter-skinned members received more lenient prison sentences than the darker-skinned women. As you may have observed, the brunt of colorism is often faced by women who are held to higher standards by society in terms of their looks. Multiple studies also show that lighter skin can result in more lenient criminal justice outcomes for black men. Dark-skinned African American students are also more likely to face school suspension. A 2013 study by the National Longitudinal Survey of Youth showed that the darkest girls who participated were 3 times more likely to be suspended than the lightest girls surveyed. Another study from 2015 showed that white job interviewers viewed lighter-skinned black and Latina/O/X/A job candidates as more intelligent than their darker counterparts. In all of these studies, controls were used when needed, showing that the reason for the different outcomes was based on skin tone alone. This discrimination can also be found in the media. Modern colorism in black communities came from slavery, which was part of colonialism, and like racism, it is still around today. In Latin America, people in poverty are more likely to be dark than light. Afro-Latinos and many indigenous peoples have a higher mortality rate than others. This stems back to the colonization of these countries by Spain and Portugal, which established a power hierarchy of those with Spanish heritage over those with native heritage. There was also slavery of Afro-Latinos and genocide of indigenous peoples. In Middle Eastern countries, the Arabic word abid, which means slave, is used to describe dark-skinned people as well as black people, showing a messed up association with dark skin and subordination. This can be attributed to historical anti-blackness among Arabs, which is mostly due to misinterpretation of religious texts that became embedded in Middle Eastern culture, and that racism also contributed to colorism. Discrimination against darker-skinned Arabs is common in the U.S., too. A 2019 study of job interviews with Arab American women showed that people were more likely to hire lighter-skinned women. When the colonization and genocide of Native Americans by white colonizers began, tribes negotiated with colonist leaders to survive. This led to some Native American women strategically having children with white colonists so that their children could have more control over colonizing forces and avoid a terrible fate. Eventually, Cherokees developed an elite class of leaders with light skin and partial white heritage. Colonization caused less melanin to become synonymous with privilege. White settlers considered their skin to be evidence of their so-called superiority, which became their justification for committing genocide against indigenous peoples. Colorism is also a problem in the Philippines in addition to other Asian countries. Bianca Punzalan gave an informative TED Talk about this issue. In the Philippines, skin lightening products are common, media representation skews toward lighter people, and dark skin is thought to be evidence of uncleanliness. Spanish colonization that lasted 333 years is shown to be responsible for this issue, embedding racism and Eurocentric beauty standards into Filipino society. My last example. Nigeria was colonized by Britain from 1901 to 1960, when an independence movement freed the country from British rule. Colonizers separated light skin from dark skin and established a white supremacist racial hierarchy. As a result, dark skin is considered inferior and used to insult people. Light-skinned students are given preferential treatment in schools and grow up to be considered more desirable. So as you can see, colorism is a global phenomenon. There are countless documented instances of it in almost every country, and every time it has something to do with race, colonization, Eurocentric beauty standards, or all three. Melanin is good, actually. Despite this far-reaching mess of systemic discrimination, the targets of colorism are finding ways to tear down and resist it. Several movements and social campaigns have taken off across India, including the Dark is Beautiful campaign, which was started in 2009 by a nonprofit called Women of Worth. It advocates against discriminatory advertising and educates others about diversity in skin color. A more recent movement was the #UnfairandLovely campaign, which aims to change people's perception of beauty. The name is a play on the skin bleaching product that used to be called Fair and Lovely. The campaign is about people who aren't fair-skinned rejecting the idea that the only way to be lovely is to be fair. It was started by photographer Pax Jones, who made a photo series of dark-skinned folks of different ethnicities and posted the photos online in 2015. It soon went viral and became popular among South Asian women, who claimed it as their movement against colorism. They posted empowering photos of themselves along with stories about their experiences with colorism. This prompted Fair and Lovely to change its name to Glow and Lovely. That's a step in the right direction, but the product remains the same. Also, the new name is grammatically wrong. However, the #UnfairandLovely movement soon became exclusive of other marginalized groups, and shut out Pax Jones, who is a black, non-binary femme. They relaunched the movement in 2018 to be more inclusive of Indigenous, Latina, Black, East Asian, Southeast Asian, disabled, plus-sized, trans, non-heteronormative, and unconventionally attractive people. Other countries around the world have initiatives that deal with similar issues. In South Korea, women are smashing their makeup and skin lightening creams, saying no to plastic surgery, and cutting their hair short to defy rigid beauty standards. This is called the Escape the Corset movement. In the US, the Black is Beautiful movement of the 60s helped more dark-skinned black people to embrace their appearances. The natural hair movement was also beneficial as a push amongst black Americans to embrace having unaltered hair. People are starting to do more research on colorism towards African Americans, and black creators of media are representing darker-skinned black people more in recent years. In some Latin American countries, ethno-racial statistics are now being gathered in censuses. Additionally, Brazil, Uruguay, and Colombia have new affirmative action policies. There is also an increased level of awareness in the Philippines and Nigeria due to the work of anti-colorism activists. If the creation of colorism was part of colonization, then its attempted dismantling is decolonization. These actions and efforts seek to reject Eurocentric standards and lingering harmful ideas that contribute to societal issues. There is a lot of work to be done in this fight, but it's a start. Conclusion. Colorism in India is directly caused by its colonization by Britain, which added to the injustice of the caste system. Colorism is tied to class, gender, and race in ways that make it a systemic issue in Indian society. It is a global problem linked to the colonist exploitation of several countries, and the efforts to fight it are acts of decolonization. Ways people can combat colorism: donating to anti-colorist nonprofits, calling out microaggressions when they see them, reframing their ideas of beauty, not pressuring others to alter their appearance to fit beauty standards, doing research on colorism, signing a petition to end skin lightening creams and other colorist products, and supporting media made by dark-skinned individuals.